let's commence the Oops All Bruins episode. Free agency tomorrow, July the 1st, and the Bruins have some money to spend here. They've got their cap space sitting at just under $13 million, as you'll get a look from Bruins cap space from Twitter. I mean, the best account for this time of year. There are going to be some trades in here. I look at Casey Middlestat still with that almost $6 million cap hit. Jonas Corposalo at $3 million on the cap hit. There are still some moves that they can make, some trades to free up some space. And don't even count out Hampus Lindholm, who I think could be a big part of this team. But that's a nice contract for a contender. He's still got a couple more years left on it at $6.5 million. Like, when he's healthy, that's a pretty good deal for somebody out there. So the Bruins can free up some more space. But obviously, looking at free agency, the two things this team needs desperately is scoring and a right shot defenseman. They're real thin on right shot defensemen, and they obviously need to bolster their scoring, hence a 6-year deal for Morgan Geekie that we'll talk about later. But of course, we're going to look at the two probably biggest forwards on the market outside of Mitch Marner, who doesn't seem to be on the market anymore. There's not a ton of scoring in this free agency class. There's not a ton of 30-goal scorers out there. In fact, if you're talking about big-time scorers, you're obviously looking at 100-point Mitch Marner guy. And then the next one in terms of a goal scorer was Morgan Geekie, who went over 30 goals this past year. So then the next two are Nikolaj Ehlers from Winnipeg and Brock Boeser from Vancouver. This is very, very tight. I think these guys are very, very similar players. But I am going to give the edge for whom the Bruins should sign to Brock Boeser here. He's a guy who brings in 20 goals every single year. He did have kind of what looks to be an anomaly season 2 years ago where he scored 40 on that really good Canucks team of 22-23, but averaging 23 goals and just under 50 points per year. He's projected to be around 6 years, $8.5 million a year. I think that could be as low as like $7.75 to $8 million. That would sign him through age 35, as he's still in his prime years right now at age 29. He's coming off a bit of a tough year. That was a tough year for the entire Canucks team. I think he only hit 23 goals, which is right around his average. 25 goals, which is a little above his average, which takes into account some of his early years. Now, he did score the 40 goals 2 years ago. That was one of his 2 All-Star seasons. The other time he scored over 25 goals, the only other time was in his first full year in the NHL, where he scored 29. So maybe that's a bit of a red flag if you're a Bruins fan in terms of the consistency you're looking for over a 6-year contract. But this automatically elevates the Bruins in terms of offensive talent on that second line. That's the problem with this team. It's really only on that first line, and it's really only David Pastrnak. Geekie definitely benefits from Pastrnak. 65% of his goals were from David Pastrnak in some way, shape, or form. So, or I think it was 65% of his points came from David Pastrnak, all told. So you need some depth in that scoring. The Bruins have needed it for a couple of years here. What a deal for Brock Boeser or Nikolaj Ehlers does for you is it finally starts to replace the production that you lost and never replaced with trading Taylor Hall and letting Jake DeBrusk go. You know, you could have Jake DeBrusk at 5 by whatever, 7.75, I think he's getting from Vancouver, or you could get Brock Boeser now for 6 by 8. And I think you're getting a pretty similar player. Where I give a bit of the edge to Boeser over Nikolaj Ehlers is some Bruins buzzwords here. The edge I give Brock Boeser over Nikolaj Ehlers is the physicality. Okay, because I know I talked about it in the build-up to the draft quite a bit. Like, I hate that the Bruins get so bogged down on big physical guys. But what I really hate is when they get bogged down on big physical guys who don't do much else. Brock Boeser does score. You know, he does give you 50 points most years. So that is, I know that's not what we would have thought of for an $8 million player last year or 2 years ago. But with this new cap, that's what it gets you. And a lot of Bruins fans were critical of Jake DeBrusk when he was here, myself included in that. But you didn't replace Jake DeBrusk. You didn't replace Taylor Hall. You even some of these guys who were here for a pinch, you didn't bring back Tyler Bertuzzi, who could have been that kind of guy. So it's kind of making up for a mistake that Don Sweeney let happen, 2-3 years ago by bringing in Brock Boeser. I do think he brings a little bit more power forward than Nikolaj Ehlers does. And that way you're bringing in some of that big physical play, but also scores goals, also gives you some offense that you desperately need. But honestly, guys, for me, it's splitting hairs when you're looking at Brock Boeser, Nikolaj Ehlers. You're getting essentially the same player. They're both 29 years old. They've both played. I think Ehlers has played one more year, 9 years versus 10 years in the NHL. Brock Boeser won a national championship in college as a 19-year-old. But you're essentially getting the same thing from these guys. Ehlers averages a little bit more, 23 goals, same number as Boeser, but 52 points. He's never scored 30, which is wild for someone who is probably the most sought-after forward on the market outside of Mitch Marner. He's only scored 24 this year for a very, very good Winnipeg team. Never scored 30 goals. His 29 career high came 7 years ago. That's another thing we're talking about with both these guys. They hit high goal totals a long time ago. They're in their prime years, but their best scoring years could be behind them just based on these trends. Of course, Boeser has what looks like kind of a fluke year at 40 goals, playing on a line with JT Miller, but that looks like something that he can do. He's playing with Miller and Elias Pettersson, kind of flipping between those lines, actually mostly with Pettersson. It's something that he is capable of. Ehlers has never scored 30. He's same projection, 6 years, $8 million. He was a plus 14 this year. Boeser was a minus 25. Take that however you will. Vancouver was a fucking dumpster fire that did not have a leader in that locker room, and they traded their best center in the middle of the season in JT Miller, and Elias Pettersson, a guy I really love, played like dog shit. So take that for how you will. Nikolaj Ehlers played for the President's Trophy winning team, the Winnipeg Jets, and he was a plus 14. So when you're looking at scoring, the Bruins should be in on two of the biggest guys on the market. It's not, again, not counting Mitch Marner. It sounds like that deal is already done with Vegas. But it's just not a great year for getting great scoring. It's a decent year for depth scoring. The Bruins next year, that's going to be a big scoring year. Could have Connor McDavid on the market. Could have, and should have Jack Eichel on the market next year. This way, you're getting some depth scoring, and you hope they don't shit the bed like Elias Lindholm did in this past year. The other place the Bruins have a serious need is right shot defenseman. They don't have any depth there. I know they re-signed Jokiharju. We'll talk about that later in the show, but that is like depth. Like that guy should be a third pairing. He should be, and on this team, he will be a second pairing, most likely, unless they move Peeke up a little bit. And really, the only big name for right shot defenseman out there on the market is a two-time Stanley Cup champion and someone you can raid from one of your biggest rivals right now, and that is Aaron Ekblad of the Florida Panthers. Ekblad is certainly the biggest name on the market. It's been, for defensemen anyway, it's been an interesting couple of years here. They've obviously won back-to-back Stanley Cups, but for the first time in his career, he's been kind of limited by injuries. He was a guy who used to play between 75 and 80 games a year. That's not been the case the last two seasons. He's only played a combined 107 games over the last 2 years. He's been dealing with some injuries. He missed a good bit of the second half of this 2024-2025 season, but the numbers are undeniable. I mean, this guy has been a really steady top of the league kind of defenseman on a very good team for a long time. He's another 29-year-old like Boeser and Ehlers, but Ekblad being a 29-year-old, there's a little bit more wear and tear on the tires because of his style of play and the injuries he sustained over the last couple of years. He's projected at only about 4/7, which would kind of fit if the Bruins can make some of these trades here, clear some cap space. They can get someone like an Ekblad and someone like an Ehlers for a Boeser and still sit within that 12.83 that they have available. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this one, but I don't see why the Bruins wouldn't be in on someone like Aaron Ekblad. They just have such a need at that position. Florida does not look like they're going to re-sign him. We know Florida's pulled some magic before. I didn't think they were going to be able to re-sign Bennett, and they did, but that's probably at the sacrifice of not being able to sign Aaron Ekblad. He went into the local Starbucks last week, gave them all like huge tips, and was like, "Hey, thanks for everything over the years." I think he thinks he's not going to be a Florida Panther next year for the first time in his career. Still steady as all get out. Only made 2 all-star teams, and they were his first 2 years in the league. But this is a guy who's still going to give you, 10 goals, 35 points a year. That's what he's giving you. Even in these shortened years, he got 33 points in 56 games this year. Like that was a nice offensive production year for Aaron Ekblad. I'll say what the concern is for him, other than kind of the injuries he sustained over the last few seasons. He's got a great D partner in Gustav Forsling. And I just don't think he's going to have that quality with the Bruins. I think he's going to be playing with either Nikita Zadorov or, more likely, Hampus Lindholm. I think Zadorov might be on that first pairing with Charlie McAvoy, and they're going to see how that works. But if you have Ekblad with Zadorov, it's going to be physical as hell. But Gustav Forsling was such an incredible, has been such an incredible Swiss Army knife defenseman over the last few seasons. He's not just a big guy who can hit. He is a puck mover. He is a shutdown defenseman that allows Aaron Ekblad to do a couple of different things and maybe cover up for him a little bit. But Ekblad came alive again in that Stanley Cup final. Man, that first D pairing was truly incredible with he and Forsling, and Sasha Barkov didn't do a lot on the score sheet in that series, in that final series. But those three really did a number on McDavid and Draisaitl, that when the Oilers had McDavid and Draisaitl on the ice at the same time, they were outscored 5-1 in the series when those two were on the ice at the same time. And that's the Oilers breaking glass in case of emergency. Let's put 2 of the top 5 players on the ice right now because we desperately need something. That's what the Oilers do when they're desperate. And Florida flat out kicked their ass when it came to those situations. And Aaron Ekblad was still a huge part of that. 4x7, I think, is fine in this new cap era. It will, of course, be cutting it pretty tight if you're the Bruins and you want to do something like an Ehlers, like a Brock Boeser. Those are clearly the 2 top guys at the forward position at a pretty similar contract value. Aaron Ekblad's pretty much the only quality right-handed defenseman out there of pretty big quality, and he's going to kind of dictate the market when it comes to that. There'll be some other teams interested in Aaron Ekblad as well, but that would be a really nice move for the Bruins to bolster that D-core. And maybe he does play alongside someone like Mason Lohrei instead of a Hampus Lindholm or Nikita Zadorov. I see Lohrei probably playing more with a guy like McAvoy, but it could be a guy where he can help, Aaron Ekblad can help bring him along. Maybe the Bruins defensemen get a little bit more active in the play like they were under Jim Montgomery and like Aaron Ekblad was with Florida. And then you have these 2 guys with some pretty good offensive talent that can pinch in on a lot of plays, keep some plays alive in the offensive zone. But on the flip side of that, we have heard Marco Sturm saying, this is a team without any offense, so we need to be a pretty stout defensive team, which is certainly what the Kings preached, certainly what Marco Sturm preached with the Ontario Reign as well. We'll certainly see how that goes. We're getting some comments in here, and I want to address some before we get out of the segment. Guys, if you have any comments about this, please do put that down in the comment section below. Roxy, I think, talking about Aaron Ekblad here. Would love him, but just extended Jokiharju at 3 years, $3 million a year. We'll talk about that in the third segment, unless we're trading Andrew Peeke, which I think it brings up a good point. Peeke is going to have some value here. I like Peeke. I like having kind of that third pairing, stay-at-home defensive defenseman who's pretty cheap. But this is a guy who's played for a while. He had a pretty decent tournament at the World Championships with the USA. There's going to be some value for Peeke. He doesn't clear a ton off your books, but it's certainly someone, I guess we can't see it from the Bruins cap space thing here. He doesn't clear a ton off your books, but absolutely is someone who could be a trade candidate. Maybe you throw him in with someone like Casey Middlestat and away you go. He's still got one more year at 2.75. So I say it's not clearing a lot off the books, but if you've got 12.8 in your cap space and you're trying to get, two guys at 15 million, like Aaron Ekblad and Nikolaj Ehlers or Brock Boeser, then that 2.75 does become obviously a pretty huge number. I think they will likely try to move on from Casey Middlestat, see what they can get for him. And again, maybe Hampus Lindholm. I still think he's one of your best defensemen, but that is a really nice contract that some contender might give up a lot for. NJ says this as well. Should the Bruins give Swayman a chance or should he be traded? I am firmly in the camp that the Bruins should be giving Jeremy Swayman a chance. Okay. I'm not going to excuse his play from last year because it was bad. And I think it was his fault by really dragging this contract negotiation along. I think he didn't come off as very sympathetic or very likable in this contract extension, these contract extension talks. And it almost felt like at times the Bruins were punishing him by playing him every single night instead of, giving Joonas Korpisalo, a guy they traded for, a bit of a shot. I think they're much more likely to trade Korpisalo at 3x3. Much more reason to get rid of that. Maybe a bit of a tough one to get rid of. Not tougher than Swayman at 8x8.25 or whatever it is. 8x8, 8 for 64, right? I think Swayman's going to have a bounce back year. I really do. He needs a tandem though. I'll say that. The Bruins need a cheap, but a guy who's ready to play in the NHL. Maybe Michael DiPietro is that, the guy from Providence. But yes, I'm giving Swayman another shot here. I think that's something where the Bruins are not in a terrible spot right now. I think they just need a dependable backup who they're going to play, unlike Korpisalo, and it would really behoove them to move off that Korpisalo contract. But anyway, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like the video, guys. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. 95% of you guys watching these videos on average are not subscribed to the channel. Guys, we're talking Boston sports and a lot of Bruins every single day. Live, high noon Eastern time on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcasts as well. We put out each of the segments on YouTube as well. We're going to be talking a ton of Bruins over the next couple of days and weeks. These trades that Don Sweeney says they're still going to be in on. Free agency. Loved the James Hagens pick. We've already done a couple of videos on that. So check out the videos on the channel. And of course, find us every weekday. I'm your host, Cam Stuart. Zach Burke keeps us on the air